This is Plant-Based Briefing, Vegan First, How Hard Is That? By Dr. Sailesh Rao at climatehealers.org. And I'm Marian Erickson. This is the curated content plant-based podcast where I narrate a variety of articles on plant-based and vegan living with permission in about 10 minutes or less every weekday. And today's article follows along nicely with yesterday's about Glenn Mercer's book, Food is Climate, where he references a position paper Sailesh Rao put out showing that animal agriculture is actually responsible for 87% of global warming when taking all of the factors into account properly. And in today's article, Sailesh talks about a Newsweek article that was published on January 13th about the LA fires, and the headline is actually, "Don't bother going vegan to save the planet, do this instead." I'll read a couple of excerpts from the article to set the stage for Sailesh's article. The Newsweek author says, "I've spent many late nights in the lab digging into whether any of the widely touted personal approaches are making much of a difference, and sadly, research shows that many of the climate actions we've embedded into our daily lives are only marginally beneficial. In many cases, systemic problems, a dirty power grid, pollution from manufacturing, or simple inconvenience, reduce the impact of individual actions. For example, recycling, particularly of plastics, is largely ineffective, according to Greenpeace, with only 5% to 20% of recycled plastics making it back into a new product due to sorting and cost challenges. Even if we recycled all plastics, we could only reduce global greenhouse gas emissions by 3.7% due to the intrinsic energy requirements of plastics manufacturing, such as heating and processing." He then goes on to say, "We could go vegan, but plant-based foods could still have a large environmental impact. For example, rice production results in just 25% less emissions than poultry farming. Indeed, if everyone in the U.S. went vegan, the country's greenhouse gas emissions would decrease by only 2.6%, according to researchers at the U.S. Department of Agriculture. And of course, getting everyone to take these actions is wildly unrealistic due to the inconvenience it adds to their daily lives. In a survey conducted by Kantar Public, only 18% of participants said they would reduce meat consumption despite knowing about the impacts of climate change. We need systemic change to ensure our individual climate actions aren't going to waste. If you're serious about fighting climate change this year, instead of recycling more, consider shifting focus to policy support and investments." And the article then goes on to talk about various policies. So now let's get to today's plant-based briefing. Vegan First, How Hard Is That? By Dr. Sailesh Rao at climatehealers.org. Quote, "When did fact-checking and journalism go their separate ways?" Unquote. Jon Stewart. The Newsweek article linked here was an example of such irresponsible journalism that it even used the U.S. Department of Agriculture, or USDA, headed by a former dairy industry lobbyist, Tom Vilsack, as a source for the greenhouse gas emissions contribution of animal agriculture. The very fact that the article was written by a graduate student and not a prominent academic should be a dead giveaway. Academics with a reputation to uphold must have declined to get their hands dirty, and instead, Newsweek threw a graduate student under the bus to purvey its irresponsible journalism. The academics have good reason to be hesitant. History is unlikely to be kind to all those who are conspiring to suppress the fact that animal agriculture is the leading cause of climate change. Back in 2009, Goodland and Ann Hag had estimated, linked here, that animal agriculture is responsible for at least 51% of greenhouse gas emissions annually. They arrived at this estimate by correcting miscounted emissions in the UN Food and Agriculture Organization, FAO's 2006 Livestock Long Shadow Report, and including uncounted emissions of the animal agriculture sector. Coincidentally, Gerard Wedderburn Bishop has now shown that animal agriculture has caused 51% of the anthropogenic global warming from 1750 to 2020. In contrast, fossil fuels and industry have caused just 25% of this global warming. This is mainly because fossil fuel combustion also results in the emissions of cooling gases such as sulfur dioxide, which have contributed to global surface cooling from 1750 to 2020. If we eliminate fossil fuel combustion precipitously, then that will increase anthropogenic global warming by nearly 50% in a matter of weeks, since these cooling gases have a half-life of a few hours to 3 weeks in the atmosphere. Therefore, the safest way to address climate change is for the world to urgently go vegan first and then take a nuanced approach to reducing fossil fuel combustion over the next 2 to 3 decades, as we showed in the climate bathtub model linked here. This is the exact opposite of what we still keep hearing from journalism outlets like Newsweek. It is also the exact opposite of what we still keep hearing from the Climate Reality Project, 350.org, Climate Action Network, or even the Union of Concerned Scientists, who speak incessantly about reducing fossil fuel combustion without breathing a word about going vegan first. This is truly baffling. Through deliberately misinforming the public, are they all itching to get sued for the damages caused by the Los Angeles fires and other climate-related disasters? Vegan first. How hard is that? That's what the facts show we must do if humanity wishes to address climate change seriously. As Daniel Patrick Moynihan said, everyone is entitled to their own opinion, but not to their own facts. What you can do: join us at VCOP20, our online virtual conference of the peoples, where Captain Paul Watson, Linda Middlesworth, Jane Velez-Mitchell, Avram Roseanne, and other distinguished speakers will be presenting facts at the virtual event January 25th and 26th. You can register for free, linked here. And you can sign our open letter to the UN IPCC, calling on them to stop fudging the data on the true impact of animal agriculture on climate change. The instructions for endorsement are in red at the top of the letter, linked here. You just listened to Vegan First, How Hard Is That? By Dr. Sailesh Rao at climatehealers.org. As always, I put a link to the original post in the show notes so you can find the call to action links and all of the studies cited as well there. And I've done a number of other episodes about climate change and animal agriculture. One in particular you might find interesting, and I will link this in the show notes, is episode 692, We Won the Oxford Union Debate. It's a great summary of a lot of these concepts. So check that out, and please share this episode with anyone who might benefit, and thanks for listening.